So this is an image I got back from my retoucher, but I actually went in and opened in layers, the original image and the image she returned to me because um, I wasn't really happy with how the skin turned out, and this is a really difficult client when it comes to skin. Even though her skin is absolutely gorgeous, what happened was she went to get a bikini wax, and the waxer, I guess, tried to wax her belly, and she ended up getting this terrible rash because she doesn't normally do that. So, I assured her that we could fix it. And so, obviously, it's not something you can really tell from back here. You can see a little bit that it needs to be done, but also what the researcher returned looked fine for an image this far away. But I know my clients zoom in on their images, and they do get digital files along with their prints. So I want to take care of this because I know she's going to zoom in on it and see it. So the only way to do something like this and keep it looking natural is with frequency separation. So I'm just going to flatten this image really quick because if you see it's a TIFF and not a background. So now it's background. That was because I brought in the old photo because I didn't want to have to redo the background and all the other work that she did on it. And also, that's just a tip for you always. If you ever need to redo anything, it's so much easier to just open that image as layers in Photoshop and not start from scratch and pull in whatever you need from the original image. Okay, so frequency separation. So you are going to create two background copies. Your bottom one is going to be your color. Top one is going to be your detail layer. Okay, now on the color layer, this is where we're going to smooth out the colors. So I have to turn the detail layer off, turn off the eye. On the color layer, I'm going to do a Gaussian blur, and this is the most important thing to make the photo look natural. So what your goal is with the radius is to smooth out the detail and the color so that you get one nice smooth color here. But you want the photo to still be recognizable. So for instance, this radius is way too high. It's not going to look right because she's not really recognizable in the photo, okay? I'm actually going to choose some skin from her face because her face is really small in this photo, so it should be a pretty low radius. So you want to go to where you can't really see the detail. Like here I can see the detail. Here I can't really see the detail, okay? I can still see her, I can still recognize her, and I'm only at about a 3 radius. The belly, I can still see the color variations, but I can't really see any detail. So this is going to be where you want to be, to where, because if you do it too high, it looks very unnatural. But you want to do it as high as possible without completely losing the recognition of what you're doing. So anyway, sorry. Hopefully that makes sense. You can play around with it a little. If you're getting bad results, this is usually why. So I'm just going to hit OK on this. And then I'm going to turn on the eye of the top image, go to image, apply image, subtract is going to be your mode. This is the tricky part that always trips me up. If you don't see these little tiny outlines of your subject, it's very faint, but if you don't see that, it's because this layer is wrong. So you always want to be on the color layer here for this process. Your blending mode is going to be subtract, scale 2, offset 128, hit OK. And then one of the things, if you zoom in, if you see a lot of color in this, it usually means that your color layer was too high. But if you just see a faint amount of color here, I think that's pretty good. That works. So now we're going to change this detail layer to linear light. Here's it. I have actions for this, so I don't often do it. It's really easy to forget these steps. I actually had to go look them up before doing this, just because when you don't do it a lot, you don't remember. Your brain just files it away. It's useless information. Sorry for the yawn. Okay, so linear light brings it back to a normal looking photo. Now I create a group and put these in a group. That way I can turn it off and on. And the goal here, when you turn it off and on, is you cannot see any change. If you've seen even a minute amount of change from the original photo to what you just did, then you did something wrong. And it's not going to look that good. This layer here, I duplicate it. Oops. What did I just do? I think I deleted it. Yeah. Undo, delete. Drag it to here to copy it. Okay. So my color copy layer is where I want to do my work. I don't want to work on the original layer, just in case I want to change something. Okay, so here's the magic. You're going to select here. You do want it to be feathered a little bit, and I'm going to do a Gaussian blur here. And this is going to really smooth out your color tones. You can see the difference it's making here. And you don't want to go too far because it gets crazy. So nice low radius, just enough to blend those colors without leaving a line when your selection is gone. So you can see what I did there. Oops, sorry. Super, super easiest, fastest way to blend the tones in your photo. And then once I find a radius that works, it usually works for most of the areas, and then you just hit filter Gaussian blur here. You don't have to go through checking it. If I'm moving to a different area, I'm going to redo it because it's not going to work the same for everywhere. But for the face, this should work for the most part. And I'm just, you want to pick similar tones. You don't want to completely flatten the image and have no color variation, because then, okay, so it pulled in gray there. But if you make it completely even tone, there it's going to be, it's going to mess with how your image looks, basically, because you need those highlights and shadows to create depth. So you don't want to just go right over a highlight. But we're just trying to really smooth out the color on this color layer. That way, when we go into work on the detail, it comes out really nice and smooth. So I'm backing up a little bit because I don't want to mess up these highlights and shadows and blend those together. So okay, so this is looking good. You can probably go faster on this. I'm just a kind of a slow poke. And okay, so far so good. I don't know what that is on her wrist or whatever. I don't remember seeing that person. Okay, so for me that was a little much. I want it to still look like a hand. I don't want to like just flatten that. And that's what I mean by flattening it out. Like it was so flat that it just didn't even look real anymore. It looked worked. So you're just trying to, smooth things out a touch and without losing the naturalness of it. Okay, so belly. This is the tricky. I'm gonna just go right into, actually go back into the Gaussian blur to make sure I have the right setting here. So blur, Gaussian blur. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that was about right to do it. Okay. Keep it about 16. Again, I don't want to do too big of an area. I'm just kind of going around the contour of her body so that not to disturb those highlights and shadows too much. This is already looking very, very smooth without even touching the detail layer, which is good, but also what I like to do just to really keep it looking a little bit more natural and not totally overworked in Photoshop is I like to lower the opacity a bit, because then I can really adjust it to where it's just still very natural looking. Okay, so I think that's good. We just smoothed out all the color variations, and now we can go to the detail layer. So on the detail layer, there are many different ways to do this, but the one I kind of like the most is to have the use the clone stamp at 100% hardness and 100% opacity flow. You want to do it on the current layer only. And this is going to basically copy a good part of the skin and paste it on top of the bad part. So it's fast, it stays natural looking, and it just it's a really, really easy way to take care of blemishes, stray hairs, those little bumps. I repeated my pattern too much here, so I hate that. That's my biggest thing about using this, and I try to use it really tiny because I hate those repeating patterns. That is what makes the skin look very patchy and blotchy and like it was worked on in Photoshop. So I try to go a little bit all over instead of just sticking to one area because of that patchy problem. I don't like to get that, but with this, I'm going to have to go much faster than I normally would since she has all of those little bumps on her belly. So if I go slower, I tend not to, or I'm sorry, I tend to repeat the patterns more anyway. So trying to be as accurate as possible. I have a pen tablet, and but still go fast enough to make it worth my time to do this level of retouching for a client. Okay, getting patchy again, so I'm just going to undo those. And jump around a little bit more. I don't know what this is on her lips, the white, I guess, I don't know. Maybe it was like flaky or chapped or something, but I'm gonna just fix that. You would normally think this would be on the color layer, but it's not, it's on the detail layer. There's so much information on the detail layer. I don't want it to look like she has a tooth missing. Alright, and these hairs, they go really, really quick and easy with this method. I actually have used this to practically reconstruct parts of people's faces if there's a bunch of stray hairs in front of it, and I really love the image. Oops. So she's really small in the frame here, and I just find it easier to not repeat the patterns and get rid of all these really little hairs and stuff like that when I'm zoomed in really tight. So do get a little bit of that orange peel effect. But again, I probably could have gone a little higher with my radius when I did the original Gaussian blur in Photoshop, because this isn't the exact effect that you get when, like, sometimes I think people really botch the whole frequency separation thing, because it just the wrong settings can make it just look very, like, the texture is way off. It looks very strange. And again, I would take a lot more time with this if it was a competition image and was being judged, but it's really just a 7 by 10. So for a client. So I'm just going a little faster than normal. I'm not taking quite as much care. Just gonna get rid of that one big. The problem is when I get in this much detail, I can't stop myself because I'm such a perfectionist and I just want to fix everything. Okay. This is why it's best if I just don't even open the images after my retoucher sends them to me. Just send them right to the client. Maybe I'll get busy enough one day to do that. And I know this is definitely a color thing over here, but I just wanted to see if detail would help it at all, because the color only helped it a little. But if that Gaussian blur technique doesn't work on the color layer, you can also always go in, add a new layer, and paint at a very low opacity. So I'm going to do like 20% opacity. I was pushing the wrong button. Sample that color and just paint it. And that's a super quick fix for color variations that Gaussian blur doesn't take care of. Highlight. Okay, good enough. Okay, so these spots are too small for me to do from far away, so I'm going back in nice and close. I'm going to just go a little bit slower here because I really don't want to get a bunch of repeating patterns here. Considering this is the focus of the image, and as you see, I'm jumping around a little bit. I don't want to do all one area and then decide, okay, I'm done, I want to finish, and then it looks weird because I have like one area done and then not the rest. So let's get rid of that belly button ring that almost every woman has. Scar. Just moving around. It's kind of boring. The only reason I'm still recording is because I thought that you might want to see the end result. So if you'd like to fast forward, feel free. I can't imagine doing this with a mouse. Your hand would hurt so bad. If you don't have a pen tablet, I highly recommend it. If anyone is still watching. Can't imagine watching this boring, repetitive work, but just in case. My daughter likes to say that things are satisfying. That's it, like her thing. I think it's so funny. I don't know if all the kids say it, but she says it's satisfying to see this happen. So the healing brush, if you're not, I use this cloning method similarly to how I use the healing brush. So I generally pick up an area and then paste it 2 places and then pick up a new area. So I'm like, click, tap, tap, click, tap, tap, click, tap, tap. I don't know if you can hear me clicking. And then I'm just doing it as fast as humanly possible for me. Alright, we're getting there, almost done. I think my pen just stopped working for a second. Does that? Still not working. Okay, maybe it was kind of a blessing because I think this is looking really good. I just, I can get crazy and go a little deeper in this area, but otherwise, if I turn it off and on, I'm seeing a pretty amazing difference here. This area is still a bit blotchy, but from far away, I don't think it looks bad at all. It's just real close up. So to me, she looks a bit more like yellow here and more magenta here. The belly is usually a bit cooler than the rest of the body. So, okay, my pen tablets. So I'm going to fix that with selective color in a minute, but I just want to finish this. My pen is working again. Go in here. Just going to do a tiny bit more in this area. Okay, that should be good. I'm just going to check it really quickly. Yeah, that looks great. Okay. The other thing I wanted to do while I have frequency separation going on is clear up all these little lines real quick. I'm going to do a little bit with the Gaussian blur. Okay, I don't want to change this highlight on her leg. So it's probably going to be better if I just do this on the detail layer. Don't want to mess with the color at all. Although sometimes in order to make things look smooth, oops, I'm just gonna, oh man, sorry, my pen stopped working again. I don't know why that happens. So I'm just going to blur this a little bit so that it looks better when I hit it with the detail layer. All right, Bugsy? Okay, a second, I'm going to zoom out. If this was, a 30 image order, I probably wouldn't be able to go into this level of detail, but this is a 6 image order. The majority of my clients don't order 30 images because that's like $5,000 order, so I just like when someone only has 5 or 6 images, I like to really make them just look absolutely stunning. I mean, I want all of my images to look that way, but it just it makes it's sometimes I have to let go because I get a little crazy. But I'm charging almost $200 an image, so this is why. Okay, I feel like it's getting a little blotchy looking. Let's go to the color. Come on. Okay. Now I'm going to turn this off and on. See how it looks. Much better there. Much better here. I'm just going to lower the opacity a teensy bit. So I'm at 84, and I feel like that is a really natural looking fix for everything. Go up a little bit. Face. Okay. The only thing I'm looking at here, I see like faint hairs, but really don't think that's a big deal. So I'm going to just flatten it, be done with that. I'm gonna fix the color of her belly because it is a bit more magenta than the rest of her body. So I just select the belly, selective color. The reds is the skin tone usually. I'm gonna adjust the magenta a little bit, and now it looks a little bit better. I think she needs some yellow there compared to the rest of her skin too. Okay. She looks pretty balanced now, so I'm gonna flatten that. And now I want to adjust for the overall color. So I'm going to do color balance. I usually like my images, I think, a little warmer than most people. But I don't know. It's something that I go back and forth with. Okay, so very subtle, I know, but to me, the subtle things make a huge difference. And then I'm just going to do a tiny bit of liquify because I lost some when I went in to do this. She's having twins. I know, crazy. So I don't necessarily want to lose part of this I mean, she was very early. She was only 20 weeks, but she's obviously a really small person, long and lean. And I just want to keep her belly as natural as possible because it, I don't want her to not look pregnant and feel like she got these done too early. Okay, so I'm just gonna finish this off with an alien skin filter. I love alien skin. I love film, and I love that it adds a little bit of grain in most cases. This is the one I used on a couple of her other portraits, so I'm just gonna stick with this one because it's overwhelming sometimes to click through all the filters and choose one, and I've already spent a lot of time on it. And I just love how it adds that contrast and that pop. And let's see, I'm going to take down the filter just a little bit because of the grain that it adds. I could have just taken down the grain in alien skin, but I just decided I think it still looks really good like that. So that's it. I will put a before and after and hope that helped you with frequency separation. Bye.